Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our latest Brightelm webinar, which is all about the question, will hybrid remain a viable format post-COVID-19? And we're going to try and not mention that awful term anymore in this webinar. This is I think the fifth or sixth webinar we've done this year, focusing on various online formats. We've done panel discussions, we've had guest speakers, and I'd say I've really enjoyed the process. We've had some really good audience numbers as well. So thank you all for taking the time out of your days today to attend. We chose this subject particularly because I feel now we're all well into dealing with online formats. We're starting to get more comfortable. We're learning more about them, about what works for our different organizations and our clients and what doesn't. But we chose this subject because really we need to start thinking about what happens when we can start running live events again, and what do they look like. We're going to be discussing lots of these things with our amazing panel today. However, in the meantime, just a quick word on why we do this and who we are. So Brightelm is a professional conference organizer. We specialize in working with associations covering 7 different services, event-focused services. That's all the pitch you're going to get today. It's just a reminder that we're here, and we're here to help if ever you need it. I'm delighted to introduce our facilitator for today, a new facilitator for us, Louise Warren, who joins us from the wellbeing organisation Eveleigh. So Louise has been working in the events industry for over 16 years, starting out at Volkswagen, had a spell in the Cayman Islands working for a DMC out there, and has been involved in Eveleigh since 2017. So welcome, Louise. Really glad to have you on board, and I'm excited about today. And yeah. I'm actually coming to Bristol, our home, this weekend.
Well, I was until COVID is, sorry, don't want to mention the C word, but it's kind of my plans. But anyway, that's another story. But thank you. Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Rob, for inviting me to facilitate this session today. I'm ever so excited to be part of this. And I feel like it's actually going to be a really exciting discussion. I probably need to have my Fiona Bruce hat on at a question time at some point, because I think we may get into some not heated discussions, but certainly some really interesting opinions. But so just before I introduce all of our panel members today, just a couple of housekeeping notes. So we are using Zoom today. We are recording the session, and the session will be available online after today. So keep a check out for that if you're not able to join us throughout the whole session. You obviously have the question Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to put in any questions that you have throughout the session, and we will do our very much best to answer all of your questions. If you see somebody's already asked a question or perhaps you've asked the same question, then please feel free to use the upvote button. There is also a chat function, so if you feel you want to kind of send any sort of comments in, then please use the chat function, but please refrain from using chat for any questions. Just use the Q&A box for questions. So just again, before we crack on to the actual main discussion points, we wanted to run a poll. So the first poll, we're going to be doing 2 polls. First one is, and based on obviously the topic of this discussion, is do you know what the term hybrid means? Yes or no? So we'll just give you a couple of seconds there just to kind of participate in our poll. And while we're doing that, oh, okay, so sharing the poll results. So interestingly, 92% of you say you know what the term hybrid means, and 8% are saying no. Okay, well, let's see if that changes at the end of this discussion. So I'm going to, first of all, invite Karen Facilitator, who is joining us today. Karen is Director of Memberships and Communications for the British Parking Association. Karen, lovely to see you this morning. Good morning. And I'm going to start off the question of, what does hybrid mean to you?
Thank you, Louise, and wonderful again to be invited on. Rob, thank you so much. I enjoyed the last session hugely. What does it mean to me? Being honest, very little. Previously, in my experience, the only hybrid sessions that I ever attended was really joining the association industry. And I was delighted to attend so many different events in that space with colleagues such as yourselves, and really learning about what a wealth of experience that you can gain from a whole melange of different platforms, etc., that you can access. Coming back to the British Parking Association, we just simply haven't had the budgets to put on larger scale hybrid events. So it's an interesting one, particularly because of the arena that we're moving into and we find ourselves in currently. And I'm delighted that I've got such experienced panelists, because I'll be taking plenty of notes, because I want to learn what we can do better in the hybrid space as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for that. So, Karen, our first panelist. Our second panelist is Gabrielle Mouterde. Thank you, Gabrielle, for joining us today. Gabrielle is the event manager at the International Society for Ultrasound in Obstetrics and Gynecology. I never know if I say that right.
It's a mouthful.
Apologies. It's a mouthful anyway. Good morning, Gabrielle. So, question to you. What does hybrid mean to you?
Hi, it's great to be talking about this very tricky topic, and I think it is a tricky topic. So ISIORG has been organising hybrid meetings or courses for about 10 years, but when we were talking about it in a very sort of simplified way. We were at the back of a room, live stream into the world, but it has completely evolved since then. And I think that with like the sophistication of the online platforms, none of our delegates or attendees or members are going to sort of just be satisfied with that, you know, just at the back of the room. So actually, I think it's going to be a very complex topic. I think there's lots of things to consider. You know, are we going to talk about studios? Are we just going to talk about, you know, having a camera at the back of the room? So actually, I think that when we start to unpick it, which I think we will do today, we're going to find that actually it's much more complex than I was talking about a few years ago, and probably makes my talks a bit obsolete. But
absolutely, no, thank you, Gabrielle. And moving on to our third panelist today, Ian Harvey Piper. Good morning, Ian. Thank you so much for joining us today. Ian is the Managing Director of Technovation and also a consultant within the virtual world. He's got 29 years of lots of experience. So Ian, again, same question to you. What does hybrid mean to you?
Good morning, Louise, and thank you for having me here. The first thing, I think that poll result is fantastic. So if 96% of the people out there understand what hybrid is, then what are we doing here? Because I don't think any of us actually know what it means. For me, and very contrary to Gabrielle, and I'm afraid Gabrielle and I will have a little bit of a fisticuffs later, I think it's not a camera at the back of the room. It never has been. That's just transmitting a live event. So hybrid for me is a live conference with audience, with real people on stage, but at the same time using that content for a virtual event, for a completely virtual audience and virtual presenters as well. And it's the same content, but two totally different shows, because you have to cater for a virtual audience who have totally different requirements and a live audience who have networking abilities and being face-to-face with people. So it's a very specific thing for me. Yeah,
absolutely. Fair enough. And bringing Rob back into the room. Rob, same question to you. What does hybrid mean to you?
All of the above, of course, but I think I look at things from an audience engagement perspective. And actually hybrid is the most accessible type of event for associations. Suddenly we've got an opportunity where we can not only meet live and have all the benefits of doing that, but we can offer choice to people as to whether they attend in person or attend remotely. And I think for many years, many associations have feared the opportunity of delivering online because they felt it would jeopardize their live events. But now we have the opportunity to really respond to what our members need in terms of accessibility to content. So for me, it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, and obviously it's been a complete new journey for a lot of people this year. So talking about the hybrid journey, as it were, and adapting to this new world. Karen, in your experience of hybrid, what is the difference in the journey of delivering hybrid events to how you've done events in the past?
I suppose it's a very clear distinction. We did physical, that's what we did, face-to-face, physical events. We were getting pretty good at those. We were making incremental improvements year on year. That's absolutely what the team and I were committed to doing. This crisis has meant that we've had to think on our feet, and we have relished that opportunity because we must make the most. If an association is not here to stand up at the worst times for its members, and I don't know what people pay the subscription for. With that, we absolutely pivoted everything to virtual, to digital, and we ran 15 weeks of webinars per week, about 5 speakers on each, and we ran 3 days of our annual conference, a virtual annual conference with 30 speakers and 15 hours of live broadcasting. For next year, the only event I will be talking about and thinking about is our large trade show. And I'm delighted that Brentex, our event management company and partners, are working very hard and with us in partnership to deliver a hybrid event. This will be the first one that we've done of such scale. This will be the pivotal point, and it's essential because while we say, will we be using hybrids post-COVID, there will be no post-COVID. We're going to be living with COVID forever, unfortunately, but we will manage it because that's what we do as human beings. We are fierce in our ability to deal with crises. With that hybrid event, we will ensure that if we're unable to deliver a face-to-face opportunity because the restrictions are tight, then we will have had the platform for a beginning, middle and an end to bring that experience to people, irrespective of where we are actually able to come together at the NEC next year. Yeah. Post that, I don't know, and it's going to be a really exciting journey for us to learn today and beyond to see how we're going to incorporate everything we've taken from virtual, everything we've taken from physical, and to see whether we can create that sweet spot going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously with this journey, everyone's had to kind of learn a whole different range of skills and knowledge, and you know, and we're kind of learning every day, I guess, as it were. Gabrielle, for in your terms, you know, what do you think is required in certain types of different skills and knowledge that you need to deliver the hybrid events now?
Well, I think, you know, Karen makes a really good point, is that, you know, when we were charged with actually having to do a virtual event, we had to like create new processes, we had to find new platforms, we also needed to find like suppliers who cater for the needs, and it was a whole new process and skill set. And something that we've been finding is that we worked so hard on the processes, and we were creating the processes actually as we had to do them, and then we actually had to be like telling the rest of the organization, you know, what those processes are. And at the moment we're just trying to go back over our processes, but I think with the hybrid, I think there's going to be a whole 2 sets of processes and 2 sets of skill sets. So some of the skills that we kind of developed and needed for the virtual meeting were, you know, much more digital marketing, something that I didn't expect, lots more creation of digital assets, and to kind of give that finish to your virtual meeting, you needed lots of great B-roll, lots of great visuals, which is something that the team definitely had to like source the skills to do digital marketing, source the right people to do creative studio design work.
Yeah.
There's also the platform. I mean, I think it's invaluable to have someone who's really technical in the team or in your organization who can help you with the platform. Luckily, we had members, like one of my team members, Zaka, had to really upskill on everything to know about the platform, and the whole team did. You know, that is something is really important. Also, like considering sort of different processes as well. And I think going forward, it's almost like you need like two sets of skills, because actually, you know, we talked about this previously about having it's two events or two formats, but actually one event. And Karen was talking about finding that sweet spot. So actually see that you've got two sets of skills or two skill groups that you're going to need to find people to really make that synergy.
Yeah.
It is going to be a lot of work going forward for next year. And I think we will be recreating processes and then doing them at the same time again.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Ian and Rob, is there anything you wanted to add on the journey of hybrid?
I think, yeah, the journey of hybrid is challenging. I've actually, it's very interesting. I think it's a matter of perspective. One of the most important things is, which I'm going to answer someone's question they've already submitted by saying this. So that's either well planned or fortunate. That the best, I believe, the best way to make sure that you have a good journey for the delegates is to make sure that you have two people, very much what Gabrielle was saying, two people thinking about the separate experiences. Because one, as a project manager and a project lead, your focus is to get the job done. Really, you need somebody who can hold on to that virtual attendance experience, and someone who can hold on to the live attendance experience too.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy when we're planning, and I do it all the time, and I'm sure we all do. We're focused on our task lists and getting stuff done. It's a constant push, but actually we often, no matter what format we're working with, we often lose sight of why we're running the meeting in the first place, and it's for the attendees. So that and we need to start thinking about that from an event design point of view as well. When we bring everything together, it's the attendees we're doing this for, not for the association. It's for the attendees.
Yeah. And I think that's a really big consideration in terms of what kind of hybrid event you are going to run. I think that has to be a real consideration, you know, because our scientific committees and our trustees want to run a hybrid meeting, but we also have to think about who's going to attend that meeting, and when is it going to be placed next year, because, you know, I'm sure that if we run a meeting, let's say in December, a hybrid meeting in December, we're not going to have any attendees. But like, you know, I think, is it for the speakers to meet? Are you going to have a studio hybrid? Because I think that is very different from a different, you know, and, you know, Ian might say, actually, that might not even consider be a hybrid, just having a studio with your speakers in it. You know, he's talking about the two audiences. So I think you really have to like have that end goal and the audiences in mind when you're creating hybrid.
And audience is just related to actually people attending. It's thinking about where they're attending as well. If you're running a global congress, a global hybrid congress, okay, you've got the time zone of the conference, but then you've also got your delegates in East Asia, in perhaps in Japan or New Zealand, and then you've got your delegates in Hawaii on the west coast of the States. So how does that affect your online experience and the experience of your live delegates and your online delegates? And is it possible to merge those? That's the question you've got to ask yourself.
And I think, sorry, Rob, I think that is the most difficult thing at present, in that we've had various briefs in over the past few months, which is talking about a worldwide audience. And yeah, when you have an association event in the Middle East and you bring everybody together, it's great. You're all there on the same time zone. You can all break at the same time. You can all have pre-dinner drinks or soft drinks at the same time. And trying to engage the virtual audience in the same way as engaging the live audience, especially on a worldwide congress, is virtually impossible. You can't say, right, we're going to do a virtual drinks party at 6 p.m. because for the people in Hawaii, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and they don't really want to start drinking a bottle of wine at 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's an incredibly difficult thing. There's a question here I see that about how to bring the two different audiences together, engaging in dialogue. And that is technically still one of the baffling things that is so difficult to do, to get a live audience totally in dialogue with a virtual audience. It's going to happen. It will happen. Of course it will. But it's still, we are learning all the time about what hybridity is. And you look at the development since March in the virtual world, and the things that the platforms can do now that no one had any idea they could do 7 months ago. We have no idea what the capabilities are going to be next February and March.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think Ian raises, or everyone raises, really two very good points. I just want to touch on the platform. I really think, we've got a year contract with our platform, and just because it really worked for our completely 100% virtual event, and it's going to work for our next 100% virtual event, which is going to be in April, talking with my technical producer, Annie McGrattan, yesterday, we were talking about actually there are lots of, for a hybrid event, it might not be the correct platform. And you really have to think about that. Does it have the functionality to allow chat for an on-site audience and a virtual audience? These are really big questions that we have to, you have to think about. So the platform you've got for virtual might not be the platform you need for a hybrid. And also talking about audiences, our scientific committee suggested maybe 24-hour programming, and the whole events team full like for 24 hours. I was like, can I hand in my resignation? No, but joking aside, they're very serious, and I'm like, well, in a virtual, maybe I could find a way to do that, but in a hybrid with like an on-site, I mean, and this is tricky. And actually this is, going back to knowing what this means. I don't know what that means. We don't have a vision for what a global organization running a hybrid meeting looks like.
Karen, do you want to add something to that?
It's so important, isn't it? Let's be careful we don't chuck the baby out with the bathwater here. We could be diluting the potency and the experience for everybody by trying to do too much. And what are we asking of our participants? And we must set expectations. Our members, our audience, our suppliers, they need us. Our exhibitors need us, and we're very keen at the moment, as Gabrielle said, to stop, reflect, learn. We have put 6 months of crisis down. We cannot function at this pace. It is relentless, and this thing is requiring stamina of us, but we must take a moment to breathe and think about what we're going to take forward. Is there a blended approach, and who is the audience? Who are we looking out for here? And again, coming back to that, content is king. Are we just making it more accessible? Absolutely, like Rob said, very important. Of course, as accessible as it can be, because travel budgets are going to be hit, time out of the office, etc., etc. All of these challenges are going to be with us longer term. It's a, we must remain optimistic. But we have to be the experts. There's a lot resting on us, and I think it's by learning together, isn't it? It's taking the best bits forward, just as we've demonstrated that many of us can work from home. Do we want to go back into that office setting? Some years ago, the chair of our board was so keen. He is a data man and he's a technology specialist. And he was asking of us, why are we not using technology more in our meetings? So we do many, many meetings across the UK for our members. I said at that particular moment, the effort that needs to go into creating a really strong agenda, but also we are using venues right across the country, and the sources of technology are really varied, so the bandwidth, etc. What you become then is a slave to the person that is zooming in to a meeting that is otherwise physical. That is a huge distraction, and I've seen so much time elapse because we're trying to manage that blended approach. We've now demonstrated that we can do all of this in a virtual world. And again, I err on the side of caution when we move back to a blended approach. It's just being very clear about what each element is going to bring and who is it going to be beneficial for. And I think if we just stop and take a moment to reflect and think about that, I think we're in the best position possible to deliver something exceptional, because we must be bold. We must think creatively, because these challenges are going to keep coming at us, and that's the only way. It's survival of the most imaginative, isn't it? But then we've got to deliver on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Karen, that leads me quite neatly into kind of our next point, really. When we're talking about delivering these events, we need to kind of think of our suppliers and who's going to help us to deliver the hybrid events. Rob, let's talk about the supply chain and contingency planning. In your opinion, what are the capabilities required by suppliers for a hybrid event to be successful?
Really, really good question. I think certainly if we're talking about running global events, it needs to be some sort of global digital reach. We've just been talking about the potential of 24-hour event formats, and actually I am talking about that with one of my clients at the moment, where we run a 24-hour event which starts in Japan but is hosted in Japan or hosted in Asia, and we have 3 different hubs which move through Asia, Europe and the US according to what the appropriate time zones are, but then that content is available to anyone online at any of that time. So that's really interesting. But I think I'm talking about the supply chain and talking about the hubs and the venues. I think a lot of venues are going to be caught unawares by this demand for hybrid and how to deal with that. And it's particularly regarding connectivity and bandwidth. I've had a discussion this week with a venue for a conference next September, and we're talking about 3 separate streams from the venue up, and of course we're not just streaming out the venue, we're streaming up and down the venue. So the infrastructure required for that is quite big and requires an investment. Of course, that's an upfront investment, and venues, I think, out of any supply chain, venues have had it the worst. Other people may argue differently, but venues have had it so bad this year. They're struggling. They're not cash cows. There are most of them are private limited companies, and I think it's a big ask them to make these big infrastructure improvements without currently having the business on which to base that. So I certainly think for me, bandwidth and connectivity for venues are the most important part of this. I think Ian will have an interesting perspective on that as well.
Yeah, Ian, go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm talking to a venue only this week about how to get ready for hybrid, and that is how long is a piece of string. You don't know what you're getting ready for because you don't know what the client wants to do in hybrid. Connectivity, absolutely. Bandwidth, absolutely. Even if you're just having 6 people in your boardroom and they want to be able to host a Teams or a Zoom meeting with their with their colleagues around the country or wherever, you've got to have decent broadband, decent internet in every room that you're working in. And there are a lot of venues that haven't actually invested in it, and they're going to have to, because yes, we can turn up, we can turn up with all our cameras, all our kit, and we can bring in our own internet, bring in as much as we need. But if it's there in the venue, it's so much easier to work. And you don't need to spend millions of pounds on this, but it's got to be reliable and it's got to be in every room. And also, we all talk about wireless, hardwired. More and more, we all go on these calls and we stuff that and all that kind of thing. If we can have hardwired connectors in every meeting room in a venue, it's just so much easier than relying on wireless and your phone goes off, or the microwave takes wireless out and smart TVs take wireless out. So it really is consideration in that supply chain. The venues are, absolutely, they're having it hardest, apart from the AV suppliers, let's get it right. But yeah, that connectivity and bandwidth is absolutely paramount.
I hope that answers Hannah. Hannah Dwyer, thank you. She asked a question as an events venue, how can we prepare to support hybrid events? And I think you kind of answered that question in terms of making sure you've got the right connectivity and bandwidth. And Gabrielle, Karen, did you want to add to that? Or sorry, Rob, did you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. I was just something which just popped to my mind, and as a result of the conversations this week as well, then we mustn't forget about our normal Wi-Fi requirements. And that we'll still have, whatever the average number of devices people have now, and I don't even want to think about it. Delegate connectivity to Wi-Fi still remains an issue in many venues. So we mustn't forget about that requirement when we're talking about overall bandwidth requirements and connectivity requirements, because it would be very easy to focus on the virtual and that streaming, and then suddenly realize at the end, oh, hang on, we've got an app for our live conference, or we've got everyone's coming is going to have 2.5 devices which are going to be on for most of the time. So we mustn't forget that delegate side of it.
And absolutely, and before lockdown, we mustn't forget that in live conferences, we were telling delegates to keep their phones on and to switch their phones on, whereas 2 years ago, we were telling them to switch them off. So absolutely. It's not just the bandwidth for the streaming. It is absolutely for everybody else that's there.
No, and that's absolutely, going back to the earlier question about skills as well, as event managers, we have to have a basic understanding about bandwidth and Wi-Fi, like broadband. Is it dedicated? Is it not dedicated? These are new skills that we're having to acquire or have a basic understanding, because to even start to appoint people and contractors or find venues, you have to either know this knowledge or seek suppliers who can help you find that knowledge out. And talking about also venues, I mean, there's a lot to consider. You have to have almost like thinking about the studio, all the team that need to be at the back of the room now. There are for the engagement, for the not just the tech teams but your own events team. There's a whole personnel, and that goes into like each of those personnel have 2 laptops, 2 screens. They might have comms on their phone. They've got WhatsApp. One of the biggest things I found that our event wasn't great at was communication. So the communication was really tough for us, finding out what we needed to communicate, the best way to do it between every single team, virtual, on-site, remote. It was a challenge, and that's something that I don't have the answer for, sorry, but we need to find that out. And I think with hybrid, that will only increase.
Yeah, absolutely. Karen?
Isn't it interesting, the irony there, that the communication was a thing that suffered? I mean, isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that the whole point of all of this? It just, there's a few things that strike me, and I'm missing them along the way. I'm telling you, it's all about rules of engagement, isn't it? And the rules of engagement have changed. So we did our rehearsal, and we've also, you know, make sure we've got good lighting. I'm telling you, my health and safety officer, my husband, he'd shut me down if he saw the amount of leads. Yes, hardwired. But if I buy one more Ethernet cable, I'm telling you, Ian, and I've had to become a jack of all trades, master of none. But I have absolutely one-eyed on my team who are incredible at the British Parking Association, because together we will be those masters and those specialists. I think really great question there about from Hannah. Very important that venues engage and reach out to associations, to the association industry, but also the events management industry, because we have to learn together. The expectations are going up. Also, I'm going to become obsolete soon. So it is not my generation that we need to be looking out for. Yes, our demographic in our association might be slightly older, but you know, that's the funny thing with age, it changes. So we've got another generation coming up, and the expectations are going to be very different. What we don't want to do in all of this, though, is do the overload, do we? There is a saturation point, and there will be a finite amount. Otherwise, we might as well just plug ourselves into the matrix. One of the keynote speakers, a futurist, Matt O'Neill, was speaking at our conference, our virtual conference, and we discussed the information age. We were also talking to Professor James Woodhausen, and we talked about Alvin Toffler's The Third Wave. And the third wave, he wrote this 40 years ago. We talked about the information age. We must make sure that we, and it was Alvin Toffler's advice, and I absolutely stand by this, because we were only talking about this in the team huddle today. We must look at multi-generational expectations and views and needs. We need to take everybody with us. This is a journey that we all need to go on. If my granny can use her iPad pretty successfully, that means that platform from Apple, you know, they've taken away the need to think. We need to make sure that delegates can join us, whether virtually or physically, and we don't make them think too much. Our attention span has gone down, right down, hasn't it? It's about 3 seconds, is it? Even if it's that, and we'll move on. Do not make me think. And if we can make sure that the venues have the best support possible to create the most wonderful environment, so that we can come in there and provide an experience for our delegates, for our exhibitors, and for our members, then, you know, jobs are good, as they say. But what we mustn't do is dilute, again, that potency by trying to do too much. We must really focus on the audience, see what they need, and collaborate in a team effort to see how we can bring those specialisms to the table.
Absolutely. And like you say, Karen, it is all about a bit of a balancing act, really, and getting all these things right. But obviously, as we're coming into new territory and hybrid events, and they're being used more and more, there's obviously going to be a cost involved with planning a hybrid events. So question to you, Ian, so now we have a better view on what it means to deliver hybrid events. What are the costs involved in doing so?
Again, how long's a piece of string? There's a lot of string going around at the moment. I'll come back to that. What it isn't, and there's a question from Jude who was saying that venues are very reluctant to spend a lot of money at the moment in a volatile climate. We're not asking venues to spend a lot of money. We're asking venues to have suitable broadband facilities to make them usable for events in the virtual and hybrid age. You know, it's as simple as that. We're not asking venues to build studios in their you know, vacant conference rooms. I know venues that have done, and they're marketing them out as, oh, virtual world, you know, studios. And it's not. It's a backdrop and it's a camera, and there's a technician there who can point the camera. Venues don't have to do that. As with any live event, most production companies will look at what's in a room in a hotel and go, well, we're not going to use the sound that's been installed in there because we want to bring our own sound in. So venues don't need to spend a lot of money on this. The cost of hybrid is frightening at times because it's 2 shows from the same budget. You've got a live event to stage. Let's assume a 2,000 delegate event at Excel. you've got to pay for that. You've got to pay for everything that goes with the live event, venue, AV, all the logistics that go with it. And then you've also got to pay for a totally separate virtual event. And yes, you've got some of the material in Excel, for want of a better place, but you've still got to create a completely different virtual show. So it's not a case of, oh, well, add 10%. You're basically looking at times, and we did this exercise a few weeks ago, you're looking at doubling the budget. So if you're paying £100,000 for a live event, you could well be paying £100,000 for the virtual event on top of that. You've doubled your budget. So it's not cheap. I mean, it is the most expensive way of doing an event. And that makes it crucial that it's affordable and you get return on investment. And that's the difficult thing. Trying
Absolutely.
to get return on investment in any of these virtual and even hybrid events is very, very difficult, which is why sponsorship is so difficult to get, which is why exhibitions don't really work in the virtual world. I know that there's a whole new webinar on this in a couple of weeks' time, but clients don't want to spend money if they're not getting anything back from it. And delegate engagement is what they get from live shows. They get the opportunity to talk to their members, to talk to their staff. If they're not seeing them face to face, and if they haven't got control of them almost, and have their presence for 2 days or 3 days where they can do so much networking and get so much out of them, then clients are starting to say, well, that's a lot of money. Do we really need to do this? And what are we getting back for it? So it is a major problem, and it is expensive.
I couldn't agree with Ian more. I think that it is really expensive. And, the title of this was, will hybrid events remain viable format? I'm not sure they're a viable format now. I mean, I think if I go to I know that my scientific committee and our trustees want that physical side. All of the comments we got through our virtual congress was, wow, it was amazing. However, we really missed that face-to-face. I think when we present those budgets to them, where we're like, it's going to double, I was speaking with my AV producer yesterday and literally said, okay, so you want me to go and source out the cost for the AV? I was like, so you want to do what we did last year in 2019 and this year, or that's just, double the amount. And so that there's a huge cost. And I think one of the reasons why associations were a little bit reluctant before to do virtual audiences is because they saw that already. They were still paying for catering, they were still paying for venue, they were still paying for AV, and then to think, oh, actually I would get less for the on-site reg fee than the online, because that people didn't really see the value before, and I don't think that's correct, but so they were charging less for online. Then they're losing a lot of money for something that they've created, and I think that's the problem. Or that's something that the problem, but also Karen had the solution. It's working together. I think venues and suppliers have to understand that associations and businesses aren't cash cows either, that actually would love to do hybrid, but there is a massive risk. We have to talk about the risk, and also the risk of the fact that we have to make decisions quickly. So we have an autumnal event, so we have to start making, if we want to go hybrid, we really have to make the decision in January, February next year. And that's a great risk, because it's a great unknown, even though we want to do it. And if we are tied into contracts and the prices remain the same, I'm really worried it's not a viable option.
Karen, what's your thoughts on that? Because obviously you're delivering events for your association. Do you think hybrid is the way forward in terms of costs?
Do you know what? I might not have a sort of huge amount of experience of this, but just from my gut feeling, and we were able to deliver, like I said, 3 days, 15 hours of live broadcasting 3 keynote speakers and 30 speakers overall for our annual conference. I certainly wouldn't have said we could have done that at the start of the year or even a few months ago, but we did. And I hope that the quality, it's all available online, you know, and the fact that we could do that, we can put all of those sessions online now and make them available to our members is just phenomenal. I can't believe it. And I'm so excited by that. Do you know, my immediate thought afterwards, what we're going to do next year, because there'll be an expectation, if we are able to meet, that we will do a physical meeting, obviously. But then how are we going to replicate that blend? So I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that we are going to do exactly that for our trade show. But the luxury with a trade show is we're at the NEC, so we have a massive amount of space. So we're more likely than not to be able to, even under restrictions, be able to come together, because you cannot underestimate the power of touch. And I mean that sort of metaphorically, even though we did send out a branded up hand sanitizer saying your membership is in safe hands with our magazine, our monthly magazine, to celebrate that virtual experience. So we could touch, but with very clean hands. But joking aside, there is no other. The risk for me, Gabrielle, is not doing a hybrid event for that trade show, because if we only rely on the physical space, then we're going to be in jeopardy of not being able to do another trade show, and that's a massive income for us, which we're super reliant on, as you'd imagine. So we have to embrace this. I'm just pleased that I've got the expertise at hand, and the confidence and the lead-in time, because like you're all saying, this is going to take a huge amount more content. If we thought putting 3 days on speakers in the hub was a task, then just imagine what else we've got to do in the lead up over those 3 days, and then also post event, if we're going to create really rich content that's going to be of benefit to our audiences, whether they're able to attend the exhibition or not. So it is a reality. It's a risk that I can't afford not to take. What we do next autumn, though, do you know what? I've put that one down, because these shoulders, they might be quite broad, but I can't carry everything, because I'm also finding all of this quite challenging. To keep my optimism up, not positivity, optimism, to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, absolutely. But do I have my moments, this morning included, where I'm struggling? Yeah, hell yeah. So it's only going to be by doing things like this, connecting, and again, I'm getting a huge sense of support. I'm getting a huge sense of support from this, because we don't all have the explicit answer, do we? But we'll work it out, won't we?
Yeah, exactly. We kind
Exactly,
of
yeah.
together. Yeah, exactly.
And I do love that about Karen. I love your, you know, it's so true. You bring it back to actually, you know, the events industry. We are really resourceful. We're creative thinkers. We're strategic thinkers. We really are, and we really embrace it. That, you know, we love a challenge. We're just getting a bit more of it this year than we last few years than we bargained for. I completely agree with that, and I think it is an exciting time. And we talked about bringing people along in the journey, and I think although we do have the next seminar, I do want to touch, just if I can, a tiny bit on industry, and you know what we were saying before is that it is really difficult for them, and I think the hybrid event is going to be one of the most difficult and challenging parts, just to have completely virtual. We found it this year, they found value in the educational talks, but actually the exhibition, well, I know Ian's got his thoughts on virtual exhibitions, so maybe I'll leave it to you, but I think it is very challenging, and we do need to bring them along with us.
Yeah, we've got lots of questions coming up, guys, but just to kind of finish off that point, Ian, do you want to add, and Rob as well?
It's from a virtual exhibition point of view, it's incredibly hard. I mean, we started building 3D exhibitions and walkthroughs, etc., right at the beginning of lockdown, and loads of interest, but it's the cost. You know, there's been a couple of comments in the chat box. Boards are not prepared to take the financial risk, and if they, you know, yes, they will build or spend £5,000-10,000 building an exhibition stand for a trade show, no problem at all, because they're going to get 4,000 people coming past the stand in 3 or 4 days. Virtual exhibition, they want to put a logo in a box, a paragraph of copy, because they might get a dozen people clicking on a button and sending an email inquiry. So it is very, very difficult. And going back to it, hybrid trade shows, I mean, hats off to you, Karen. I'm going to come and visit it, because it's going to take a lot of work, but if it works, it's going to be bloody good, no doubt about that.
But if you're coming in, sorry, but if you're coming in, we better quick, look busy.
I was saying, and Ian, is that going to be virtual or in person?
Oh, always in person, always in person.
We're all going to be coming to you next year for best practice scenarios, Karen. Just like
Oh my,
add pressure to you.
see the shoulders sinking now under the pressure.
So I think we've heard in terms two things in terms of openness. I think actually we've all had challenges, and one thing which is great this year is we've all become a bit open with each other, sharing challenges before which I, as a business owner, I've been sharing challenges with my clients which as a business owner I wouldn't have done before. I've said to clients, I'm having a bad day today, and they've gone, I am too, don't worry about it, we'll get through it together. We've been doing that, they did it this week, because we do have bad days because we're still working in very alien environments. But on the risk conversation, it is important to talk about risk, but it's also important to do accurate scenario planning. So we're not just going to boards and saying, we think this is risky. We're giving boards the information. We're showing them what scenario planning is, what scenario A, B, C, D, E, and what the cost implications are, and what the cost implications are of different decisions on different dates throughout those scenarios. We can't run our industry on perceptions of risk. We have to identify real risk and present that. Because if we always talk about perceptions of risk, we'll never do anything. So let's be calculated about it, and let's actually do the scenario planning that should be done when we're making these decisions, so they're informed decisions rather than guesswork or perception.
We've got a lot of questions. I'm just conscious of time. We haven't got much time left, but let's just pop into some of the questions that we've had through. There's one interesting one that came through, and actually talking about the longevity of hybrid and what the future looks like. Rose actually put in a question: how soon will virtual and hybrid events be a key stream of uni courses? I think that's actually a really interesting conversation starter, in the fact that if this is going to continue, then we're going to be looking to as you were saying, Karen, another generation. What do you think to that, Ian?
I'm in two minds about uni courses anyway.
Okay, let's move on.
I don't think they're good by any means, but I think no doubt within a few years there will be, or not even a few years, maybe next year, they will obviously be virtual. And it is the way it's going. There are courses on event management, there are courses on media, there's courses on lots of things, including how to be a technician. So yes, it is going to become part of the curriculum. There's no doubt about that. But, and I will say this because I'm old, experience means everything. And what everybody speaking here, what everybody listening, everybody in the industry is learning by experience at the moment. There is no manual that people have been looking at since March. We are learning as we go along, and it's bloody tough, and I think we're all saying that we do have our bad days and have our good days. Some days I wake up and have no idea how to achieve what I've got to achieve that day, because there is no manual to read, and we have to learn it trial and error as we go along. So it's
a school of hard knocks, Ian.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
Tough milk round and a school of hard knocks. That's the way we're going to get there.
Yeah.
But it's about creating intimacy, isn't it? And what we must do is, you cannot live life through this thing, right? But I am living life through this one. So it can be 7-8 hours a day, and the minute I'm late from one, that will have a knock-on effect because there is no space in between. It's just, again, I come back to the original. We've invested in a large CRM project. We delivered it last year, thank the Lord, because without that we would have been absolutely up the creek, to put it mildly. The one thing we did, though, when we did a huge amount of preparatory work with E&H Consulting, absolutely fantastic. Jane and David took us through. We did a big workshop with the team. We had this fabulous, great big sort of wall chart that we produced with all of the, what we were trying to achieve, etc., etc. We got to the last column was about the IT changes, and that's what we were going to be investing in. A very expensive piece of kit, as we all understand. This column here, though, was about business process change. And I said, this is fundamental, guys, in the lead up, and it was a 3-year project overall. We need to do everything on that list in terms of business change. We need to review every single process that we have, go back to basics, identify the nub of the problem, even though we might have to go back a few steps just to stop, think, go back, because we're going to just keep replicating the same problems. No piece of IT kit is going to solve the issues that we have internally about how we have a dialogue about what our processes are. That is what we did. And I'm delighted to say we won an award for Best Membership Engagement in 2018 as a result of it. I believe we've done exactly the same. The beauty of having it's our 50th anniversary this year, and we had an absolutely packed calendar of everything and its dog that we were needed to do. We literally tore that up from the moment we had lockdown. And we keep saying, Bex Harper and I would keep saying, we're making it up. And what's the harm of that? We're making this stuff up. And that's the beauty. And it's really exciting. And it's found every sort of creative juices to say, well, why can't we? Could we? Can we? Can we reimagine that? Can we rethink it? Why not? But I keep coming back to that we have to be careful that we don't chuck the baby out with the bathwater in our haste to move forward, because everything is changing, like we've already said on this call. So it's just, again, move forward, then stop, regroup, rethink, because we're going to need that as well, aren't we? We can't carry this alone, can we? And what wonderful comments again. Nearly there was a little tear in my eye. It's these sorts of sessions to stop, to get out of the parking bubble, as enthralling as it is. And I say, who knew parking could be as complicated as it is? But to come back to peers, to come back to colleagues, to come back to friends and specialists, and to seek advice, support, comfort, just to stop for a second, because we do need to create that intimate space, because this is not the only thing we're about, is it? We must connect, but you can do that virtually as well as physically. We're doing it right now, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. So just before I hand back to Rob to kind of end this session, we are just going to do the final poll for today. So after this discussion that we've just had, has your definition of hybrid now changed from before? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Be interesting to see what the results are from this. Oh, interesting. So 43% have said yes, the definition of hybrid has changed from before, and 57% saying no. So that's really interesting to finish on. So I'm going to close off there. Thank you so much to Karen, to Gabrielle, and to Ian today for taking part in the panel discussion. We could talk about this all day. And I'm sure everybody that's joined us today would love to kind of carry on the conversation as well. But a huge thank you to you guys. Huge thank you to Rob as well for setting this up, and also for inviting me along today. So I hope you all have a great weekend. And Rob, over to you.
Thanks very much, Louise. Just to say to everybody, don't go yet, because we are going to extend we are going to extend the session, as we usually do, by 15 minutes, just to cover some of the extra questions which we've got. And whenever we've done that, we've had some really interesting nuggets of conversation. So please don't don't go off just yet, unless of course you have to. Can you put the slide down 1 second, Tara? Thanks. I just want to thank the panelists personally, and thank you, Louise, as well, because when we started doing this webinar series, I did it because I suddenly lost my entire order book in March of everything I was doing. And I really felt, okay, I need to do something where we're just bringing people together and supplies, but it's just kept me in touch with the community. It's kept my business in touch with the community. And as a result, now I literally cannot keep up with the number of inquiries we're getting. So I'm having to bring an extra resource just to deal with that, because everybody wants our services. So I want to thank, the panel don't really realize how much it means to me for you to give up your time and support this. So thank you so much. So just a couple of things to follow up with before we go back to questions. Rose, thank you. You're so kind. You're so kind. Thank you. That's a lovely comment. Yes, I'll have the slide back now. Thanks, Tara. Also, thank you very much to Tara and Gemma, who are behind the scenes event managers today. Round of applause to you. You both do a fantastic job. Thank you so much. We have a separate company. We started another company in lockdown, because why wouldn't you? So we have another company called the Event Training Company. We now have 3 courses, all delivered by experts in their fields. We don't employ trainees, we only work with experienced experts. So these are our 3 current courses. So if you go to eventtraining.co.uk, you can book on a course. They're all 2 hours long. They're all delivered live, and they're only £49 each. And we've just had fantastic feedback. They've been received really, really well. And my final comment is to remind you of our next webinar, which is Friday the 27th of November. Tara, is registration open for that yet?
Yes, the registration is live, yes.
Thanks very much. So registration's live now. You can go onto the website and look under events. We're going to be talking about how we can help exhibitors get the best return from online events. We've talked about how they're having a bit of a raw deal at the moment, and that's not a status quo which we can accept. Our exhibitors, as Karen said, our exhibitors rely on us to help them with marketing, in the same way we rely on them to help us keep costs, fundamentally add value to our members and keep costs down for registration fees. So we cannot afford to accept the status quo or accept the proposition that online exhibitions don't work. How can we make them work for exhibitors? So we've again got a great panel. Martin Fullard who's editor of Conference News, Gavin Newman from iVent, and Guy Timson, who is actually a sponsored exhibition director at Brightelm. That will be hosted by, I can't remember, Tara, is it Claire or Sam?
That one is by Claire.
Okay, Claire Forestier, who has facilitated us before. So she will keep, I can see there's 3 guys on that, so she's going to be keeping them very much in line. So thank you very much for your time. I will now hand back to Louise to facilitate our final questions.
Yeah, sure. So we'll go starting from the top. So Carla has said, how do you offer maximum return on investment for exhibitors, sponsors? Will they have a face-to-face and a virtual presence?
I suggest we part that for next month.
Next one, that's fine. Yvonne, given the huge learning curve which everyone is on, how can event planners be sure that they're not taken advantage of on a professional level, i.e. get right product at right price? Ian?
There's no way of guaranteeing it. It's the same, again, with any supplier for anything. Recommendation. You've got to go with recommendation and your gut, really. We took part in we put costs together for an event. We subsequently found out 14 companies had been asked to submit. Crazy, absolutely crazy. It's balmy for the event manager, sifting through all those things. You take the first top 6 and you just throw the other ones out without looking at them. you have to approach it the same way as you do with any event or any purchasing. You look for recommendations, and then go with your gut and get 3 or 4 and talk to all of them and talk honestly to them. You know, we all used to pitch for live shows. We're pitching for virtual. We're going to be pitching for hybrid. So it is literally going for recommendations. I know it's difficult. You go on Facebook, you tap into a Facebook group, can somebody recommend a decent platform? You get 60 different answers. So it is difficult. It is difficult, but you know, it's talk to people you know. Go on LinkedIn, talk to the 3 of us, the 4 of us. You know, we've all been there, done it. Just use people who have experience, and they can point you in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else add to that?
No, I think that's exactly what I would advise.
Right.
I think actually just talking about platforms, we did touch on this yesterday. You know, we have now a flood of platforms. None of us can keep up with them, and we're now getting pitches from halfway across the world. Use my platform. You know, we will now. I'm sure we will now see platforms start to specialize. You know, I've already identified through the work that we've done at Brightelm that actually virtual platforms. There aren't many virtual platforms that can adequately support association events. A lot of them are very, very linear focused, and they're not really dynamic enough. So I think, you know, we will start to see more specialisms on platforms, but we also have as suppliers to make sure that when we get inquiries, we are probing those inquiries properly. You know, to make sure, you know, if I get an inquiry and it's 1 of 14, I find out it's 1 of 14, and I do ask the question, how many people have you gone to? I won't do it, because actually, as a business, I don't have time to do a proposal for it. It's not cost effective for me to do a proposal where I have a 1 in 14 chance of winning that business. I'm much better off spending my time doing a proposal for a client who said we're only going to 2 companies, or 4 possibly. So, you know, do our own probing.
Just an additional comment about the platform. So I do think my comment about a hybrid platform will be different. I think you definitely need to think about the engagement of those and how that platform will do it the best. I'm also hoping that someone from the gaming, this is just me, I'm hoping someone from the gaming industry turns their attention to the events platforms, because I think that we are missing out on, I mean, the gaming industry, hands down, of online engagement, community, it knocks it out of the park. And at the moment, we are working with people who have created sort of like shells of platforms. And I think there's so much we can learn and we're not using, like, you know, gamification. When you see, I talked to my team about this, about when Candy Crush, for example, where like there's little bubbles, or things like Spark when you achieve something. Like, our platforms are so far away from that. And about talking about future, you know, it's the next future. You know, we've got to think about how sophisticated our you know, the things that we like to be on are, you know, those interactions. And I think we've got a long way to go. And I would just say, just be cautious about going into very long contracts with platforms, because I think there's going to be huge developments.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of these platforms are offering a year or 18-month contracts. The amount of stuff that's changing so quickly, as I said before, we don't know what things are going to be capable of in February or March. It could be totally wrong for you, and you signed up in September and you're stuck with that platform, and they're not putting their little emojis on, whereas other platforms are putting little, you know, happy bubbles in. Gamification, there are some great companies out there that have taken their face-to-face stuff and convert it to online gamification. Seriously, some really, really good companies that we work with out there. And, you know, it is making things far more fun for the virtual world, certainly.
Yeah. Moving on to the next question from Hannah again, I think from a venue point of view, what are the panel's thoughts on how to price hybrid events? Should it be the same cost for virtual and in-person attendees? Karen, what's your thoughts on that?
I don't know, and I'm just really glad that for virtually everything we don't charge. We've done everything in this virtual space for free, and we've opened it up to everybody, including non-members. It's getting our priorities right. At the moment, we were really focused on getting the content absolutely bang on. Going forward, we've had to look at monetizing and how we're going to deliver on the deal and expectations. And I'm delighted to say that we've moved very quickly into a period where we are. There is a lot of money coming in now because of some partnership working arrangements that we're creating, and the webinars and the podcasts have become a really important part of that. Does that then free me up to ensure that I can continue to provide events that I don't need to charge for attending, so that people that want to come physically can do that at a very low price? Do we then charge for our online content? Probably at some stage. Right now, I'm just glad I don't have to worry about it. And the trade show is free to attend. But the exhibitors must get, like we've already said, they must get the return on investment, which is why we're creating a platform that's going to support them, even if we're not able to physically come together. So it's a moving feast. Is that the right word? I always want to call it beast. It's a moving beast. It's a beast. And I'm going along for the ride. What I don't want to do is make anything inaccessible to our members, because I think that just defeats the objects, and we will have shot ourselves in the foot.
It's great that you do things and you don't charge. Personally, I think I think it's wrong, and that is what has given everybody issues in the last 6 months, is that because there's been no charging, everybody thinks the internet is for free. A Zoom call, it's free. Well, it's not. You have to pay subscriptions, and if you want to use Zoom for professional purposes, you have to pay for it. And the only way of being able to afford to do an event is, unless you've got a nice big wad of money that you don't mind spending, you have to charge people for it. Now, in person, no, you can't charge the same as for a virtual delegate, because you're not charging the virtual delegate for food, you're not charging them for venue, etc., etc. But then at the same time, they're saving money by not having to travel. So they do have to be different costing models. But I think that the day of the free event is getting rarer and rarer, because people need to start charging to be able to then employ the experts to do even better virtual and hybrid shows. And those people are not free. We cost money, simple as that.
Just really quickly, and Rose, you're absolutely right. It is unsustainable, but we are a membership association that has subscriptions, so we have the luxury of actually that is our main income, and also sponsorships. But no, you are right, and actually you want to pay for the quality, don't you? That didn't mean that we didn't pay our keynote speakers, absolutely, just because we weren't paying our delegates, absolutely not.
I think. Yeah, we're an association, but we charge for our events. We have to. We wouldn't be possible. It's one of our main income streams. So quite envious, Karen, that you don't have to think.
The annual conference we would normally charge for, absolutely, but
I think it's a really valid point. It's a really hard. The pricing is going to be really hard, because even though we've got massive people saying great value for money, super, was the most amazing event, but it was expensive. But they say this every year, so they did literally. They weren't complaining about the catering this year, which was like a good. Although someone did say on our virtual cafe that they were looking for their virtual soya milk.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, but just as a joke. But I think it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Because it's going to be so expensive for the on-site venue. And we talked about, I don't know if we covered this or just one of our prep meetings, but we were talking about exhibitions, and actually, to hire out an exhibition hall is really expensive, and to actually ask an exhibitor to invest in that is really expensive. And the registration fee covers part of that setup and that hire. And so it's a really hard it's going to be a hard pricing structure.
It is, yeah, it really is, and it all comes back to engagement and value for money and all of those things. Hannah also, Nicola Pierce has asked, talking about engagement, so obviously engagement, value for money, any clever ideas on how to bring the two different audiences together to engage in dialogue? Rob, thoughts?
Thanks.
Just put you on the spot there.
I mean,
well, can I just say, hang on, you need to charge for this, Rob, because this is a $64 million question. So if Nicola wants the answer, she's going to have to pay you for it.
Yeah, okay, really good point. I mean, there are ways using technology to bring the audiences together. I'm getting
Rosie said all eyes are on you, Rob.
I mean, we're all in a similar place of still working things out, and we must make sure that people, when we're talking about hybrid, and I'm just going to focus on that we are thinking of it as one event for everybody. So it's really important that, as well as thinking about the two different audiences, we do still hold the perspective that it is a one event. So yeah, I mean, it's really important to think about how those groups are going to engage with each other. It doesn't necessarily, depending on the size of your event, it doesn't need to be necessarily thinking about bringing the whole community together under one banner, but actually, what can you do to help both audiences interact where those crossover in that Venn diagram is in interests? How actually do you bring people together? Gabrielle.
Yeah. And I just want to follow up that. I completely agree with Rob, and I'm just saying that actually, in something Karen mentioned, I think the most and the difficult thing is actually just going to get the simple things right. I think that's going to, I think if we can focus, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on, if I can get that chat function to be the best it possibly can, where both my virtual and my on-site can ask questions, can give emojis, can give their feedback. If that works really well, and I can demonstrate that in the room, and that will be a massive bonus. So I'm going to focus on the simple until I can see what else, and then I'll do my research on the swish.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, very quickly, really good point, Gabrielle, because people are trying to do things in the virtual world that they want to do in the real world, and it's not totally possible. And keep it simple and it works. The more complicated you make it, unless it is tried and tested and multi-proven, keep it simple, it will work, and that will get the reaction from the delegates, and that is what you're looking for. You have to look after the delegates.
And this brings me on nicely to a question that we have from Matthew Bates, and actually touches on what Karen was talking about in terms of health and safety earlier. Matthew asks, as an industry, our very first responsibility is the safety of our delegates, speakers and staff. Given the current national COVID statistics and lockdown measures, when do you think that we will be in a position to bring anyone together to meet in person soon? And how do you weigh out that risk, safety and reputation versus reward?
I'm not going to take any gambles on saying anything. This session is being recorded, and knowing my luck, someone will take a clip of it and said, "Rob, you said this." We have no idea.
No idea. No.
So let's plan around the fact that we have no idea. That's the thing to do. Yeah,
absolutely. How are we doing for time, guys?
We're out of time.
Out of time. So there we go. We'll wrap it up there. I'll leave it to there. But thanks again to all your questions, guys. It's been really amazing to see all the chat and the questions that have come through. So thank you very much. And Rob, I'll hand back to you to close off again.
Okay. Well, yes, we're closed. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And we'll see you at the next one. Thank you very much.